indicator as to if Michigan is a pretender or a contender for the playoffs. Get your popcorn. It's Michigan and Nebraska. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in on this Football Friday. The conference season is upon us. We're ready to get things underway. Talk all about football over the weekend. My favorite topic to talk about. So I'm in a great place. I hope you're in a good place as well. We are going to be talking about, now this is from last week, we are going to be talking about the college football from that's going to take place tomorrow. I'll give you a prediction on the game. And we start out talking about the actual game, which is going to take place around 3:30, 3:40 kick on CBS tomorrow, and everything that is at stake for this one. I think it's pretty easy to look at it and say that Michigan has to win this game if they want to be in the playoffs. Now, you can get in the playoffs, you can draw it up a lot of different ways, and so you can have 3 losses, but you need a lot of different things to happen. And is that likely? No, it's not likely. Like I said, you could draw it up, but it's not likely. So, 2 losses is going to be the thing. And, if you lose tomorrow, then you got to run the table. That's what's at stake for Michigan. And if they lose tomorrow, are you really thinking that they're going to rip off the rest of their games and get into the postseason? Probably not. They would still have the chance. But if they are able to go on the road and win this game, it's going to say a lot about how this team has come together under their freshman quarterback and how they are going to be a dangerous out and are going to be a dangerous team the rest of the way. Now, just taking a look at how things have gone, Michigan has looked very good at home against New Mexico and against Central Michigan. You expect that? I don't know if you expected Bryce Underwood to look this good. That's been the story, just how good he has looked as a true freshman quarterback. But then immediately you say, but what about Oklahoma? Because he did not look good against Oklahoma. He looked like a freshman quarterback. The whole Michigan team, you can say, wow, they have looked good. I watched them play against the Lobos and the Chips. They didn't look very good against the Sooners. That's what happens in college football. You don't look as good when you're on the road. So if you're analyzing this one and saying, yeah, you're going to have to see it on the road for Michigan, in particular with their freshman quarterback, to believe that they're a contender, I think that is I don't say fair. I think it's completely understandable for anybody who was trying to be objective and looking at this game saying, you just don't know if Michigan is ready to take that step. We're going to find out, but you don't know. Do you have to take a leap of faith? That's where I'm thinking or sitting at. Do you have to say, I just love Michigan, and you say that, and you just say that Underwood has looked so fantastic. He's had the experience on the road. Yeah, you think that he's going to make that jump. Well, I happen to think he's going to make a jump too. He's got this. He's got the experience, and seeing what he did, throwing the ball in the first game, and then running the ball in the third game, and then that second game where they did tiptoe down there, and they came in. I don't want to say timid. They came in with a game plan, not utilizing their full complement of players. It wasn't a bad idea, but it didn't work, so it ended up being a disaster in with how they played against Oklahoma. Predictable, whatever. And maybe that's where you're at here, saying, Michigan, you're going to be able to get Nebraska plus points at home in the Big Ten. Sign me up against a freshman quarterback. Again, I understand that line of thinking. In fact, that's been my line of thinking all summer long. If you've been watching this pod, that's been the most fun thing to say, saying like, hey, Underwood is going to be great. Looks like he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But he is going to struggle on the road till he gets his feet under him, until he gets that experience. And Michigan's probably going to drop a couple games on the road because of that inexperience at the quarterback position. That's what I was saying. That's why I picked against Michigan in their first road opener. So this is a very tight game as you look at the point spread. You can easily, I think that I don't think that there's, if somebody wants to argue that Michigan is going to lose this game, again, I think it's an understandable prediction for all of the reasons that you've gone over. For me, I'm going to jump ahead here. I'm predicting Michigan, which goes against what I said in the preseason. You say, oh, you're a flip-flopper. Well, I've watched the teams play. That's been the biggest part about it. I've watched Michigan play with their freshman quarterback, and I'm getting in early on that. I think that he is ready to dominate college football, dominate the Big Ten. I think he's ready to take the next step. And I've put it through, analyzed all the depth charts, taken a look at how these teams are playing, and then envisioned Michigan there in the fourth quarter and allowed Lincoln, Nebraska. And I think that, led by Bryce Underwood, that Michigan can make enough plays in the fourth quarter to win a close game. And I'm just saying that I'm going to jump in early on that without saying, sure, I would like to see how the game is going to play out before I say that whether or not I think Underwood has arrived and everything. But that's part of what it's about, making your pick and seeing if, you're going to be right about that or not. Again, I think I don't know if it's a prudent or the reasonable. Is it most reasonable to say that Michigan would lose this game? Yeah, I don't know. I think that if you're, it just depends on how you think about football. And yeah, down through the years, seeing how freshman quarterbacks have played on the road, I'm just this with Underwood, his playmaking ability, and I realize the competition. That is the one difficult thing to factor in. It's like, Michigan was going to beat Central, they were going to beat New Mexico, and then when they're going up against a big time team on the road, it's a completely different kettle of fish. And so that is the hard part. But I think that that's also the lead for everyone. Like, we've seen it. We've seen them at home against easy competition. We have seen them on the road against tough competition. This is the latter. So for Underwood and Michigan, see them coming up short. I get that. I felt that. And sometimes you can buy into the coaches and you say, oh, boy, you're an easy, people could just tell, oh, you're easy. You bought the Michigan looks great against the easy teams. And you've also bought in that, the coaching staff is going to fully utilize Underwood, and they're going to let him cook. And, you could be a little hesitant on that front. Fair. Acquisition or whatever you want to say, if you're accusing me of those things. But it's really about Underwood and them saying that they're going all in, and me feeling like they are passing the torch, that it is his team. And then Seeing what an explosive running back like Justice Haynes, I go back to the first game when Michigan, it was the play that Haynes scored on that Underwood blocked with his throwing shoulder. He let in and made that big block, got everybody excited. He could have easily kept that and ran around for the score. He was doing that a lot in that game. I don't have the number. I didn't chart everything down where he was presenting the ball like it was going to be a run pass option, but there was no run in there. It was all that he was giving it. He was not doing the running at all. And people are like, I don't know why they keep doing that if he's not going to run. And then, he was not going to run down in Oklahoma, although he could have, but, then he unleashed it. And seeing that his ability, the dual threat ability, and knowing how much that can just freeze the defense for a second, it makes all the difference. I think it's going to help the Michigan running game. I think it is going to help the Michigan passing game when you have a quarterback that can buy time. We've seen that. And then you also have a quarterback that can take off. That is going to loosen up that secondary too, as they're going to have to come up and start making plays. What I am saying is that the full experience of Underwood, I don't think from this day forward that I'm going to pick against Michigan to lose a game as long as Underwood is the starter. And say that's how impressed I am, or that's how much you've bought in, or say whatever you want. I know the value of having that kind of quarterback in football at any level, and Michigan's got one. They have put him on display. They are buying in. They're handing him over the keys, and I think the rest is now let's see it, and let's see it starting tomorrow. So those are my remarks. That's how that's where I'm sitting. That's how I see it. As always, I am interested to hear what the Michigan fans have to say. Like Robbie, who leads us off, and he says, we come out hot on offense and eat corn on the sideline on our way to a big win in Lincoln. I don't remember if he was the first, but he's the first one that's coming to mind. Was it 2 years ago? 4 years ago? Blake Corum, when he was mimicking eating corn after a touchdown. I like it. I liked it then. I hadn't thought about it much until right now. And yeah, I think they could come out and eat. Keegan is asking, what if you deep fry corn, which is something I've never thought about. You're frying it when you put it into oil, when you're popping it. So it would just, if you put it into a deep fryer, it would just pop in the deep fryer, and then it would absorb. It would be very greasy. If I make one mistake repeatedly over, I hear you read and listen to successful people. One of the hallmarks that they always say is, don't try to make the same mistake twice. I always make the same mistake when I'm making popcorn, and I make it the old-fashioned way. They've got the bags, and I've done that in the microwave. Comes out pretty good. I've had air fryer, air popper. Not for me. I like to have a little bit of that oil in there. I like the old school way. Put it in a pan, to put some oil in there. But this is the mistake I always make. I put the oil in there. I have advanced where I'm not using like seed oil, I'm using olive oil in there. But I put it in there, and I always put too much. And I look at it and say, ooh. And then I'm dabbing a paper towel in there to get it out, or even taking a spoon and getting it out of there. I don't understand why I can't get that right, because it always looks like I should just have more. If I have made 100 batches, I have put too much oil in it 100 times. I just saying that's just me. That's just the way it's going to be. Ronald says the pundits had me nervous, but now I'm thinking Michigan 38, Nebraska 12. I don't know which pundits you're talking about. So are they making you nervous because they're bullish on Michigan or they're picking Nebraska? I think as somebody who has picked games this year, I have not had a show where I'm picking, looking at the menu, looking at each and every game, thinking about, I've got to pick 3 games and I got to pick Michigan and I got to pick Michigan State. So it's been a different experience for me, but I know as someone who picks games, if you're somebody that's nationally that's picking it, this is a game where Nebraska's sitting at home getting points, and you've got Michigan. You've already seen how they've played on the road, and you have the freshman quarterback. I would think that nationally this would be an easy game to pick Nebraska. You just look at freshman quarterback, road, Michigan, you've already seen that. This is a lot. And you're getting points or you're getting money on the money line. Take it. I think that is probably, without looking for 25 people nationally that have picked this game. I did see on Twitter that there was someone that was saying that there were a lot of people that were picking Nebraska. And like I said, I see that, but that should not make you nervous at all. As somebody who wants to make picks, what you want to do, if you just pick all the favorites, people are like, it's a pretty easy, you're just picking all the favorites. You want to mix it up. You want to pick underdogs if you're picking. And so this is an easy one to pick a dog, Ronald. Ferris is ready, and he likes Michigan 25, Nebraska 19. Smash plus Underwood equals a Michigan victory, and that is going to be the idea. I think if I could adjust your line there, I think it's going to be Underwood, number 1, plus Smash, number 2, equals the Michigan victory. And again, I think this is it's important to me. I don't know how important it is to everyone else, because you're like, these are just things that are abstract, saying that this is Underwood's team now, or he's the number 1 option, or he has the keys to the car. But Michigan's identity has been smashed, and I think that the torch has been passed to Michigan's identity as Underwood now. With Smash being involved, obviously they're going to still want to run the ball. But the number one thing, Ferris, and it's illustrated here with how you have written it out, and I would change that up. I think it's big. I think it's a major deal. Again, I know some people have looked at, you're just buying this hook, line, and sinker. Okay. I believe it. I think this is the way what they should do, and this is what I think they are doing. And I think it was difficult to head into the season saying, we're just going with this. We're just letting this kid cook right from game 1, even though all the things that we're saying, like, man, we've never seen anything like this. Now is the time. And I think that they will be doing that. Where's my fireworks? There they are. I put my fireworks up, and I'd like to see them in the background. And there they are. It's a firework kind of show. So I don't know what you think of that distinction or not, Mr. Ferris, although your moniker is Smash the Number, so you might not like that. 21-20. Since Ohio State has beat Michigan. I was going to say, is that one of my favorite Rush albums? 21-12. So that's already passed. Keegan is thinking 24-20 Michigan. Here's a question asking if I am worried about the offensive line. And I would say that the easy answer to that is yes. I am worried about Michigan's offensive line. I'm worried about Michigan's receivers. But number one, I'm worried about their offensive line. And they're not going to have El Hadi. And it does not look like Brady Norton, who had won the job at right guard, is going to be available. So they've got both of their starting guards out. From what I see, there always can be changes, but it looks like for sure El Hadi's out. Maybe Norton would play, but I'd put him as doubtful, and so I don't think either of the starting guards are going to play. So yeah, that's worrisome. But when you have one of the best playmakers in the country, not just in the Big Ten, but in the country, in all of college football, and that's what Underwood, he has emerged. And I think that what is going to be said about Michigan is that they have the trigger man. They have one of the best in all of college football 4 games into his career, and they are going to be difficult to handle. And that, you have a player like Underwood, you make all of those offensive linemen better, your running game's better, your receivers are better, everyone is better. He lifts everything up when you have this kind of player. I was watching that kind of player last night. And it wasn't Tua for the Dolphins, although I love Tua. I was a Tua truther for a long time, the way that he throws a very catchable pass. It's always been a thing of beauty for me. But no, it was Josh Allen. Josh Allen makes everybody better. James Cook would be pretty good, but he wouldn't be anywhere close to what he is if he didn't have Josh Allen. Josh Allen is the Buffalo Bills. Bryce Underwood, I don't know if people don't like hearing it because it's college and, it's so much more where you talk about it. It's a team game and, it's true. And, it's Michigan who's, played so many years of football and everything else to just say this is all revolving around Underwood. But I believe it. I believe that Michigan has their Josh Allen, their Lamar Jackson, just 4 games heading into their 4th game. They have the prized possession that every team in the country, every team that plays football wants. You want the point guard, the quarterback, the multifaceted dual signal caller, and that's what Michigan has. And oh boy, did they got one. Now he's had to go out there and prove it on the road. I'm just trying to jump in. People have been jumping in since, since they've seen him, since he's been 5 years old, maybe. Oh, he's the prodigal son. Hey, sometimes that stuff just comes true. Because I did hear that about LeBron James. And, from, I hate to say Sidney Crosby, because people throw something at their screens, but the great ones. That's what he is. And so, yeah, I'm worried about the offensive line. I'm not as worried about the offensive line as much as I am excited to see Underwood unleash his dual threat capabilities on the Huskers starting at 340. John is saying that Underwood is already a top 3 quarterback in the Big Ten. Unleash him and Michigan wins. The closest Raiola is to being a good quarterback is being a poor facsimile of Mahomes. What's Mahomes' younger brother called? That's more like, yeah, I think Raiola is pretty good, but I don't think he's Bryce Underwood. He's played a lot of games, and he's at home, and I think this is going to be a close game. But, John, I'm with you. I saw, was it Urban Meyer who this week ranked his top 3 quarterbacks in the Big Ten, and his top 3, well, it was Dante Moore was number 1, the former Michigan recruit. They were recruiting him hard. Is that the way to say it? Dante Moore, number 1. He had Underwood too. I forget who he had 3. He didn't have Julian Sayin. Did he have Aller 3? I don't think so. Surprising. But already, Moore and Underwood 1, 2 in the Big Ten. So I can't wait till. Well, I was going to say I can wait. Oregon and at Penn State, but yeah, that's the thing when you start saying, you know, everybody overshoots things and gets in early and all that, and I'm doing a little bit with Michigan and Underwood against Nebraska, but yeah, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He's one of the most dangerous players in all of college football. I know it has happened fast. You know, life comes at you fast, and so do prodigies. And, you know, that's, to me, the thing. Yeah, unleash them. Let's see it. Big number, 42-24 from Didi. Akil says the Huskers D is very welcoming to a good running game. You know, it's surprising to me. I said this on Wednesday because last year at Ohio State that Nebraska's rush defense held Ohio State to 64 yards on the ground. And you know, I watched that game. Nebraska was up in the fourth quarter. I mean, they were playing tough. I've watched a lot of people point out that the weight and the size of the interior defensive linemen for Nebraska is they're a little light. And, you know, I don't know out of those 3-4 guys up front, how many of those guys were down at the Horseshoe last year. I do know that the numbers, if you're looking at these first 3 games, you got to be careful there. 2 of them against the Houston Baptist and whoever, you know, Goodrich Farms or whoever else they played. And then Cincy, you know, you get a little bit, you know, skewed. Oh, they can run on them. Look at, you know, Houston Baptist was able, but if Houston Baptist or whoever they played was able to, you know, run a little bit on them, what's Michigan potentially can do? But I agree. Looking at the numbers that the Huskers D, that you can run on them. You got to finish popcorn off with some butter in the pan. You know, a little, you know, it just depends how much you eat popcorn. You just can't always go with the butter. But, man, go to the movies, get one of those, or you see them cranking that. I don't know what's in that. It's butter. Put some air quotes around that. But, man, got me thinking, you know what? We have some corn. Should have brought it up. Got some corn in the fridge right now. You know, you can make corn in the microwave, just throw it in there. But man, you boil the corn, and it just things. It comes up. It makes the real deep yellow. Then you roll that in some butter, and you know you get some salt going there. It's pretty good. Pretty good. Now, John is saying that popcorn is gross. Michigan sweet corn on the cob, pretty tasty. Well, normally I would say, John, you're being a big homer. And John, I don't actually agree with you, but since it's Nebraska weekend, I'm with you. I don't remember when it was, but I was pretty young, and we were out in a cornfield, and there was a farmer there, and he just grabbed some corn off the stalk and peeled it, and he said, "There you go, eat it right there, raw, right off the stalk." And I thought, I'm not doing that. He grabbed it and said, "There's nothing better," and he started eating it right there. And so my brother did it. My mom, I think, did it. Then there I was. And I thought, what? It's actually not that bad. I'm thinking that it probably was some Michigan sweet corn. Now, I did it and I thought it was good, but I don't know if I've ever done that again. I don't know if I've ever even thought of that story till just now. U of M is tired of all the Matt Rule year 3 talk. Let's go in there and play Michigan football. Yeah, the Rule 3 where you would go, I guess you would go to Temple, and then you would go to Baylor, and then is there another? Is that when he went to the pros? I don't think he got 3 years there. His 2 other stops in college in year 3, he turned them around. So U of M doesn't like that talk. Yeah, well, put an end to it. Like I said, Matt Rule is a good coach, but considering that Matt Rule is the opponent tomorrow, and considering that Matt Rule shot his mouth off a little bit when it came down to, the Stallion situation, and he was trying to cover his ass, himself, trying to get some, I don't even have the quotes or exactly how he said it, but he was basically like, the law shouldn't count against us because of Stallions. And you don't need to, and I don't need to try to put myself in his position and say, yeah, he's got a point. To hell with him. Give him a big L to chew on. John says that it's a fact that 95% of the national media is picking Nebraska. Everybody but Joel Klatt has to be pretty confident. Reminds me of everyone picking against Michigan, against OSU, and Bama in the Rose Bowl. Yeah, out of 95% of the national media, I'm not really sure about. I'll take your word for it. And again, I saw somebody alluding to that fact. And again, I gave you the reasons. You can go back to the beginning of this show. Mahomes is not actually Mahomes. The baby. What's Patrick's brother's name? He's the one. The D will be the star of the game. Well, that would be nice. Hey, any way it goes, Hadley, I would say that, if Michigan wins, you'll probably look over the defense and say, hey, they probably had a good game. I think the number 1 star is going to be Underwood. Number 2 star, Haynes. 3 star, let's just go through it. I'm going to go Barham. Barham, I know it was, again, this was just against Central, but on the edge, he looked like a man possessed. He looked like he was ready to tear people apart. Paul is talking about, how about some avocado or coconut oil? Before adding some corn, olive oil will smoke at a good popping temp. I don't know. I like coconut and avocado oil, Paul, but I can say that I don't make popcorn as much as I used to, but have I made it, 3 times in the last 3 months? Probably. And I know that I have used olive oil, and it comes out great. And, I've got a glass top that I put on there. It pops. It works pretty good. I don't know. I think maybe I'm just, you're talking to some, some newbies when it comes down to popping some corn here, but there's some things, that I feel like I'm pretty good at. I know my pan. I know my corn. Smash is talking. He's got a question. Is Poggi more of a gambler than Moore, and is that a good thing for this game? Well, I don't know. Heading into the season, I would have said that Sharon Moore, if you'd have said, do you think he's more of a gambler or more of a guy that plays it safe? I'd said, oh, he's more of a gambler. And I would point to when he was the head coach in the 3 games in the national championship season, when he was going for it on 4th down against Penn State, I believe. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I distinctly remember against Maryland that there were a number of 4th downs that Sharon Moore was going for it. And the same thing against Ohio State. I mean, he was going for it. Then you get to this year, and against New Mexico, there was a 4th and 1 that I think everybody in the stadium, everybody watching, everybody in the stadium would have gone for, and then he didn't. And then when he was down at Oklahoma, he went ultra conservative. He went ultra conservative with his quarterback, understandable. And then he went ultra conservative with his place kicker, which, I don't know how understandable that was, although he did end up missing a kick. So I don't know, Poggi, why you would say that, he's a gambler. Is he a gambler because you feel like he is the one that took the handcuffs off of Underwood? And so, he's like, forget everything. We're just rolling with Underwood and we will go for it all the time. Because we have one game against Central. And sure enough, they did go for it. Now I'm thinking the one time that Underwood, they got out in there and it was a 4th down and he peeled off and made this impressive run for a touchdown run. But since they have talked about and they get into the situational football of, I think everything that happened, Poggi said this, everything that happened this past Saturday, everything that will happen this Saturday in terms of going for it, that has all been discussed. And so I don't think that Poggi is going to be, I don't know how much of a factor, but, now that I'm talking through this, it was weird because in those 3 games that Moore was in for Harbaugh, where there was no doubt he was going for it, which you say that he was a gambler. But then last year, there were back-to-back games where I was down on Sharon Moore. The one was the Oregon game where Dan Lanning won the game with a coaching decision against Sharon Moore, where he had the punt lined up and the motion guys out, and then he had somebody over the center, and Sharon Moore needed to recognize that. The guys up in the booth needed to recognize that. They did not, and they caught Michigan with their pants down. They got a new set of downs. It was like a turnover, and that cost Michigan that Oregon game. If they had a chance, at least, you would have to grant that that was a huge blunder by Sharon. The next game against Indiana, there was a late in the game clock situation where Sharon needed to call a timeout, needed to get and they let, 20 seconds, ended up being a 5-point game. It was one of those that you watch, you say, this is not a really well-coached team, if you're going to be honest. Now, not a lot of people want to be honest, and they forget those kind of things, or they don't like talking about them, but it was a complete coaching blunder, back-to-back games. You don't talk about it as much because Michigan won, they beat Northwest. They got Underwood right after that, and they beat Northwestern to get goal eligible. Then they beat Ohio State. Then they beat Alabama. So people don't talk about those back-to-back blunders by Moore. And, he's had an off season where, he's been able to self-reflect, been able to work on the process of when they're calling timeouts and what's going down on the field, the whole operation. He's had a chance to work on that. I don't know what kind of deal Poggi is going to be if he gets into these situations. I mean, you got to be a quick thinker. You've got to have trusted agents around you giving you the proper information, and then you got to be able to make the call. So it's a little bit of a wild card that way when it comes down to it. It's not nothing. But I don't know about you saying that Poggi is more of a gambler. I don't know what you base that on. We got a 17-10 pick here. Is there any Michigan quarterback that even comes close to Underwood's talent? He's been watching Michigan football since the early 90s, and I don't think anyone does. Henson, JJ, both talented, but no Bryce. No, I've never seen it. I think that there was a running quarterback named Antonio Bass. I don't know what kind of passer he was going to be, but I thought he was going to be a great runner. But hell, I thought Orji was going to be a great runner, and he wasn't all that great of a runner. He couldn't pass at all, and he wasn't all that great of a runner. I don't know. Henson was going to be a first-round pick, so I don't know. I would say Henson, and I don't know what it would have been with Leach back in the 70s. But yeah, I'm going to say that Underwood is the prototypical quarterback right now, where you look across the landscape of all of these quarterbacks. They're talking Klubnik and Aller and Mateer. But Underwood is got an up arrow next to him. Mr. Martini is talking about my favorite drummer of all time, Neil Peart. Oh, True Blue Tom likes Michigan 28-20. Bryce's ability to run and pass will open up the game. Oh, Tom, I'm right with you. Not the exact prediction, but the Bryce's ability to run and pass is going to open the game up. I'm with you. Raiola hasn't thrown an interception this year until now. 3 picks, and Barham will sack him at least twice. The Blue Monsters of the Midway, Michigan wins 27-13. I like the storyline of Ernest Hausman going back home. Now, it's not just that he committed and played for a year for Nebraska. He came from Uganda when he was, I don't know how old. So he lived in Nebraska, for 12 years in Columbus, Nebraska, which is just a little over an hour from Lincoln. And so he was there for 12 years. And then, so he had to be, pretty young. I don't even know how much he would remember Uganda. Maybe he did, if he was 6 or 7 years old. But he spent most of his youth, is that what they say, formidable years? He spent most of his formidable years right outside of Lincoln. So he is really coming back home. And he is a nice bit of linebacker that Michigan has there. I would expect a real emotional and solid game from Hausman. The other thing that I like is Rod Moore returning to this game. And Rod Moore is one of the great Michigan players of all time, and it seems like he hasn't played for Michigan in 5 years or 10 years. Was Rod Moore's last game the national championship game against Washington? Didn't play at all last year. Hasn't played this year. But we don't forget how effective he's going to be is a question. But when you get someone of the caliber of Rod Moore and add him, it reminds me of one of the last times Michigan went and they won at Nebraska. It was a safety that made the play. Hawkins, I think Brad Hawkins made the play where Michigan ended up winning that game. It was a dicey game. I mean, it was it wasn't looking so good, but Michigan ended up prevailing in that one. But yeah, Hawkins made the play. But Rod Moore coming back, even if it's not necessarily the play, his presence, I believe, will have a positive effect for Michigan. Daniel, Michigan doesn't have the O-line, receivers, or the DBs to win this. They're weak in many areas. Nebraska has an undersized D-line, but they're good everywhere else. Hope Michigan can win, though. Yeah, when you say that Michigan doesn't have the O-line or the receivers, I agree that those are big question marks. Now, the DB, Zeke Berry, is supposed to come back. I also think that putting the offensive line, wide receivers, and DBs with questions next to them, how it is completely fair and totally understandable. My point is that a quarterback the ilk of Underwood is going to make those receivers and offensive lines better. Not even how much he makes the DBs better, but he will lift that line and he will lift those receivers. And so when, they do need to play better, weak in many areas. They are weak in those three areas, but the quarterback can help with 2 out of those 3 areas. And the DBs, they're getting more back. One of the great Michigan DBs of all time. And do I think Zeke Berry, and Jair Hill, and Jaden Sanders, and, it's the corners, I think the corners worry me out of all those 3 areas where you called them weak, Daniel, and I think that it's understandable that you say that. Again, the DBs are of most concern, but obviously you can make a case for an offensive line for sure. And now we're quoting Rush songs that if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. John, going back to the national media card, he says he feels as if the national media is basing all of their Nebraska picks on the Oklahoma game, not knowing that Michigan has switched up the offense. Also, this game will have Klein and Hansen, unlike in Norman. Yeah, one more time, John. National media, they want to pick upsets. And Michigan is technically the favorite in this game, even though it's 2.5. So you see a team on the road getting points, and then you watched Michigan play at Oklahoma. It's a real easy one for now. You spend a lot more time thinking about this game than all of these national media people that you have talked about. And they're looking, because you don't always just want to pick the favorites. So I completely understand why nationally Nebraska would be the pick. That's it. There you go. There you go, Rico. The Michigan's going to have to watch out for Jackson Raiola there on the sideline. That's it. John is pointing out all these dual threat quarterbacks that have killed Michigan over the years, including Donovan McNabb from Syracuse, the second game in 98 at Michigan Stadium. He did kill him. Troy Smith, one of the great college quarterbacks, Heisman Trophy winner. Vince Young in the Rose Bowl. Dennis Dixon, Oregon. It was the 2007 season. Woo! He says, etc. Now it's finally our turn. That's John, you've made a lot of, I would say, both entertaining and informative feedback posts. I like this one the most. Dave's has a joke. We can't tell it anymore. I got to sit here and eat buttercorn. I don't know if I know that one. Dave's talking about Rule Rico is sick of these 3:30 and night games. Well, that's going to get me to the second part. I was going to discuss the menu of these games, and I put, I think, without putting them on the screen, I wrote these down to look at the games. And so Utah is playing a noon game against Texas Tech. It's a little strange that would be that way, but they want to get into that 12 o'clock window. So they're playing a game that in Mountain Time, if I got that right, would normally be like they're playing a 10 o'clock, a 10 a.m. game. So they're doing that for TV. Michigan, Nebraska at 3:30. Got two games, 7:30 window. Florida at Miami, Illinois at IU. A couple of years ago, if you told me I would have been watching Illinois at IU in a 7:30 game, and both teams would be ranked, and I'd be interested. I'd be like, I don't know, in basketball, not in football. And then MSU at USC at 11. It reminds me a little bit. Rico is sick of the 3:30 games. Now, hey, Rico, look, I like the noon games myself, mostly just noon games, mostly because if you go to the Michigan game, you get home and you can take that night game in and watch it. But the advantages, I like 3:30 and 7:30 games for tailgating. I mean, you get, the noon start, and you got to get there pretty early if you want to get into some tailgating. But 3:30 prime time tailgating, then you get 7, 8, 9 hours of tailgating when you get a 7:30 start. So to each their own. And I have to. I remember as, I don't know, about a youngster. They don't have to be that young because Michigan didn't start playing night games till like 2011. So it hasn't been that many years. So like just 15 years ago, I would watch those Michigan games, and then I would come home and I would watch these SEC games, and it just looked night and day. And it was such an atmosphere, and it was fair to say, you got to get Michigan to play a night game. Can you just imagine the advantage, the setting, the recruiting? These kids, you're watching Michigan play at noon, and you're watching Death Valley, and it's like, whoa, I want to go there. So I've always accepted that part. I thought it was interesting earlier this week when Jim Scarcelli said, what about the kids? When he was talking about MSU and USC playing at 11 o'clock. And sure, what about the kids? What about the kids when they decided to bring in 4 West Coast teams? That was going to be, they were going to have to travel. And, oh, yeah, once in a while, they're going to have to play some late games. People talked about it at the time. But I don't know how many people were saying, what about the kids? People have been talking about, what about the kids for a long time? What about the kids? Lloyd Carr never wanted the Michigan-Ohio State to play after Thanksgiving because he wanted his kids to have time for finals and to be home for Thanksgiving. Well, that's completely out the window. Nobody's talking about the finals or the kids or being home for Thanksgiving anymore. I don't know. I would say write a letter to the president, write a letter to the athletic director, and write a letter to your head coach and say, hey, Sharon Moore, what about the kids? Kids are getting paid now. So I think the kids, all of them, if it came down to having a nicer schedule where they could be college students or they could get paid and have to sometimes play at 11 o'clock, I think every single one of them would pick the the latter. And, Scar, he played football at Michigan, and, he has said a few times that the only time that he could really be a college kid when they would play a noon game, well, then he could go out and party on a Saturday night in Ann Arbor. Well, these guys can't do that anymore. The times have changed. Well, there'll be a point where, you don't want to spend $300 to, you don't want to spend $50 to park. You don't want to spend $300 on a ticket, and you'll just stay home, or you don't want to, pay your cable bill. And so at some point, will you get old enough and just say, you know what? I've had enough. And just turn it off and say, to hell with it. It's gone too commercial. But when I see it's interesting, the 3:30 games, because I thought that was one that we had all, pushed by. I don't know. I'm sometimes caught there because I get what people are saying. 11 o'clock. I used to complain as much as anyone. When there's different starting times, though, that specific point, I like games all spread out. Tonight, I like that. Is it Rutgers and Iowa? I would never watch Rutgers and Iowa, but they're playing tonight at 8 o'clock. I'll probably watch some of that game. Especially if, the Tigers are putting up a bunch of goose eggs again. I'm sitting there watching them get shut out in Atlanta. I'll probably watch some college football. So I like that they have Friday games. Well, what about the kids? What about the high school kids? Legit point. I like when Michigan and Michigan State don't play at the same time. I like, taking those games in. Now, 11 o'clock is going to be too late for me. I'm not going to, BS anyone. I'm not going to watch MSU at USC. Might watch the first drive or something, but I'm going to tape that game. And when I wake up at 6 or 6:30 on Sunday morning, I am going to watch MSU at USC. Fun fact, Sunday night football, Monday night football. I didn't do it last night. I DVR those games. I guess I don't even know if I can DVR Amazon Prime. I'm not sure if I can. But then I wake up without knowing what happened, and I watch the games in the morning. Now, I told my friend that. He said, well, that's nice. I got to go to work. So I'm like, oh, yeah. Well, that's, that sucks. You're going to find out when you can do it. But I had two great experiences this last week. The Bills and Ravens game, it looked totally over. The Ravens were blowing them out. And I wake up the next morning, I start watching. I'm like, wow, Buffalo comes all the way back. Amazing. The Monday night game, I'm watching J.J. McCarthy. And, he looks so bad. Felt bad for him. Felt bad for my wife who had picked J.J. and our family fantasy football league. And I said, yeah, J.J. It was terrible. I watched it the next morning, and he came back. It was great. There's Mar. He's in. Doug says they really missed the tight ends in the OU game for Bryce to target. We'll have Klein and Hogan. Yeah. I think that's I've said fair point a bunch of times, but I think that's a good point. You could make a case that however you want to order up Michigan's pass catchers, I'll put, Klein, I would put number one on that list. Hansen, all off season, I was saying was going to be Michigan's top target. And then he got hurt, and then I had to change that heading into the season. But quarterbacks, young quarterbacks and their tight ends, those guys are best friends. So again, having both of those guys back, Doug, I'll go as far as saying it's an excellent point. And one that I wish I would have put in my write-up for the Maize and Blue Review. But it's a very good point by Doug S. Dave's is saying, forget the national media. More than half of the money is on Michigan. Fat Mahomes. Yeah, Barry coming back would be nice. Mar, here he is. smiling with a maize jacket on. Dave's just used the number 2 preset on the microwave. Yep. Dave, it's so simple. If you find the right popcorn, it's pretty simple. Take that thing off, throw it in hit number 2. Next thing you know, you're good to go. I mean, once you do that, I have to admit that it reminds me of coffee. I K-cup it a lot. But I know that, one, heating up plastics is not the best. You can say whatever you want about that, but I do know that's not the greatest thing. And I don't even think it doesn't taste as good as if you brew it, whether you're using a traditional coffee maker or whatever you're using to French press to make that coffee. It doesn't taste as good as just K-cupping it. But also, when the K-cup rack is filled with the kind of coffee that I like, and my wife keeps that thing full, when I go down in the morning, I have the option. Hey, why don't I just use the percolator? That thing will take like 15 minutes. When I camp, we use the percolator. That coffee tastes like, you could sit around drinking that stuff all day and you just be like, this is heaven. Why wouldn't I use 15 minutes to percolate it? Because it takes 15 minutes. The other one is just a traditional coffee maker, pretty good. That probably takes 7 minutes. The K-cup, I watched this lady on TikTok who was saying, here's some great stretches for your hands. And she was going through these stretches. You make a fist, and she was like, you do this. And then she was like, you bend them, and then you shake them. And she's like, doesn't it feel good? And I'm like, it does feel good. And come to find out, this is what I've been doing this for about a week, is that by the time I do these 5 or 6, the coffee's done. The K-cup is rolling. It's all set. Rico is talking about Wink leaving after this year. Hell, I thought he might have left after this past year. So there you go. That's it. Okay, do we have one other thing? We're talking gambling. He is a gambler. Taking the air out of the ball was a bet that didn't hit. Most opponents would have folded in the 4th, at least in the past. I think you're talking about Biff. I guess. Talking about him being a gambler. Keel is saying that Biff has a podcast. I didn't know that. That's it. I have a picture of Biff. Biff's got a sweet ride. I remember seeing it one time in the parking lot. And I was like, sweet ride. And then you look up and it says Biff Poggi. But it's such a nice car that, just like a lot of people, I took a picture of it, and I'm going to just show everyone. I'm pretty sure I know where that photo's at. It might take me like 10 seconds to find. 10, 9. August 12th, and I still don't have it here? Because I send all these emails. Give me a second. There it is. So here's Biff's ride. This is pretty sweet. That is a Rolls Royce. I don't know why I'm holding it so funny. Sweet car. That's what your head coach is rolling out there with. Mr. Martini says, is there any updates on Coach Diorio? Yes, there is. And it's a very positive update. Jerry went in for some surgery before the football season. And Jerry was not waking up. Jerry was in a coma. And his wife, his family did a remarkable job of keeping everyone up to speed and fully updated on what was going on. And for 2 weeks, I followed my wife's advice because I was telling her about Jerry. And my wife said, if I was you, I would do nothing but think about good things and positive things about Jerry. I would not think of anything else because you don't know anything about what's going in there and it's not going to do you any good. So just keep positive thoughts and good thoughts about Jerry. And I followed her advice. That's what I did. Jerry has come out of that coma. I saw a picture of Jerry yesterday or the day before, and he had a big smile on his face. I sent Jerry a text last week. He was kind of coming out, I think, of that, and he responded. So it's a miracle. I feel like, and it's positive, nothing but positive things. I feel good about it, and I can't wait to see him and talk to him. So thanks for asking, and I think he's. I think it's happening. Mike says he's thinking about a close game. Mike, I am thinking about a close game as well. And, there's one part about when you make preseason predictions, and I picked Michigan to go 9-3, and I predicted that they were going to lose their first 3 road games, which, of course, this is their second road game. But what has happened to me was I saw the running ability of Underwood. I saw the passing ability, and then I didn't necessarily think about both Klein and Hansen coming back, but that's another thing that I would add in that I like. Houseman, homecoming, Rod Moore. But really what it boils down to me is that Michigan has a special player at the most important position, and he has come into his own, and that the coaching staff, that Sharon Moore has handed over the identity and he's passed the torch to this incredible player. And I think that is going to make the difference for Michigan to win this game in the fourth quarter. Close. I like Michigan to win this game 23-20. That's my official prediction. Michigan wins it. And a lot of things that go on into it, but mostly is I think Underwood got that learning experience. The way he processes the game, you had to go through that Oklahoma game. And, in the offseason, I was going to say, he's got to go. And, the learning experience in Lincoln, and then he'll go out to L.A. I think it's now. I think that he is ready to do it. I think he can do it, and I think he will do it. And I think he will be the difference as Michigan wins the game 20-17. That's how I see it playing out. That is my pick. A reminder, following the game tomorrow, we will have a post game, and I'll see you then. We got a few final people coming in. Let's answer some of them. Nebraska. Let's see. So we got some people arguing amongst themselves. It's okay. How about the Tigers' historic collapse? I need to shift my focus to the Lions and Michigan basketball. Can't trust Michigan football yet. Well, let's not give up on the Tigers yet. Hey, look, yeah, I got it. I mean, I said these last 2 nights I've watched these games where they haven't scored any runs. It was painful. Very as much sports pain as somebody taking a bat, just smashing it over my head. It was tough. It's been tough. But like the Lions, you got to win in the postseason. So, well, yeah, they got to make it. They got to make it. And, so if they don't get a bye, they got to win. Or it can, it'll go down as, very disappointing. Of course, if they don't make the playoffs, then, I mean, that'll be even more than disappointing. So I don't even know I don't even know. I haven't yet put my thoughts together on what happens if they actually don't make it. But if it happens, I'll have to have some thoughts there. And, let's, when you say you can't trust Michigan football yet, so to me, sometimes, the Tigers last year, nobody invested in them because, they didn't give you any reason to. And then all of a sudden you got to where they made that incredible run. It was like, wow. And then they won some games. It came out of nowhere. And it was just a fun little organic playoff run that we had never seen. But then this year they were playing so well and everything was going so great that it pulled everybody in where they were emotionally invested. So that's tough. I think when it comes to your main teams, Michigan, you're always emotionally invested. This part where you say you can't trust them, that's fine, but you're emotionally invested. So you're 100% of your focus and your emotional investment is going to be in Michigan. If you have that kind of investment in the Lions, you are someone who has been scarred repeatedly over the years. And it takes a special kind of fan to be a Detroit Lions fan. These last 2 years in some ways have been really nice. I mean, they've been awesome, but the second half against the 49ers and the entire game against the Commanders last year. Let's go. 24-10. Couple last predictions here. If smash is going to happen, it happens, but it hasn't happened yet. I like the way Clay says it and has said it. There you go. Goes to show that games in April mean as much as in September if you build that lead. Yeah, good points. Well, that's going to do it. I'll talk to you after the game tomorrow. After Michigan beats Nebraska, I will turn on the mics and I'll be here. So I'll see you then. In between now and then, I'll see you over on the Maize and Blue Review. Go to on3.com. Smash that button that says subscribe, and I guarantee you'll love it. So all we're doing is talking about Michigan football. Mostly, I say all. There's other things that go on over there, but Michigan football is the main item that we're talking about. So smash that button. That's a lot of fun. And then the other thing I will say is what Jerry Diario always says when he's on this show on a Friday. He says, hail to the victors. So that one's for you, Jerry. Get well soon. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you after the game tomorrow. So long, everybody.